In this video lesson, we're going to wrap up our look at the quantization features in Pro Tools by checking out the swing option right there. Okay. What I've got here is I've got a drum track, which is a good way to demonstrate swing, and I'll be using Easy Drummer as my drum virtual instrument. And here, just so you can see what we've got as far as notes, we've got a 1-bar pattern, and we've got a kick on 1 and 3, beats 1 and 3, and we've got a snare on beats 2 and 4, and we have hi-hats on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So a series of 8 eighth notes for our hi-hat, which would be pretty typical for a standard pop pattern. Okay, let's go ahead and you can see, let's zoom in, and you can see that I am not right on the grid. You can see that these notes, some of them are a little bit early, some a little bit late. So let's tighten this up and quantize it without any options whatsoever. Now, because we have eighth notes, we have to use an eighth note grid. So let's go ahead and highlight the notes. Okay, and eighth note grid is selected and no options checked. Let's apply, and you can see that it tightens it up right there. Okay. Now, with an eighth note grid selected, when we're quantizing there, what Pro Tools is doing, it's actually looking out 480 ticks that way. No, I'm sorry, 240 ticks. When we have an eighth note grid selected, an eighth note is 480 ticks. So again, reminding ourselves, a quarter note, 960, an eighth note is half of that, divided by 2 is 480. Half of 480 is 240. So that means that what Pro Tools is doing, when it quantizes notes to the eighth note grid, it looks out 240 ticks before and 240 ticks after the grid, and then pulls everything into that eighth note grid. So here, 240 before, 240 after, everything within that 480 tick range, 240 on either side, gets quantized to the grid. Okay? All right. That being the case, let's go ahead and swing. Now, with swing, the basic concept behind that is that the and of every beat is shifted to the right or delayed. So let's go ahead and select the and of every beat. Let's go ahead into slip mode and just slip those over to the right a little bit. Let's go back to grid mode and select that area to play, and let's see what we've got. Let's undo that and see where it was, where our starting point was. Here's where we were. Okay, so that's where we were, and here's our swung track again. Okay, now we could keep working with the slip tool and going back and forth and sliding those notes around until we got the feel we wanted, or we could let Pro Tools do the work for us and present us with some options that we can really easily redo and undo. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and grab all the eighth notes, and we're going to apply the swing, and when we apply this, we're just going to see the and of each beat move to the right. Okay, so let's go ahead and swing. All right. What percentage range does Pro Tools use? 0 to 300. Kind of an unusual range of numbers to use, 300% swing. But let's use that, let's take those numbers and make them a little bit easier to understand. Let's take 100% and let's say that is 1/3. Let's take the number 200% and let's say that is 2/3. And let's take the number 300% and say 300% is 3/3, or really 3/3 or 1. So actually swinging so hard that we've swung the note all the way essentially to the next beat. Okay? All right, let's go back, and now let's go back to 100%. And now that we've got the concept of 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, or dividing things into thirds, let's go ahead and take a look at our note here. So we've got an eighth note. An eighth note is, anybody? 240 or 480 ticks. Okay. Let's divide that grid, that 480 tick grid, which is between here and here. Let's divide that by 3. Okay, so 480 divided by 3, 160. That's going to be the number to keep in mind, 160. Okay, let's go ahead now and swing this note by 100%. Now its current location is measure 2, beat 1, 480. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to add 160 ticks to 480. So 160 plus 480, 640. Let's see if the location of this note after we swing it is measure 2, beat 1, tick 640. Here we go. Let's select it. Sure enough, measure 1, beat 2, 640. Okay, let's undo that. Now let's go back to our calculator here. And let's take the number 160, which is 1/3 of that, dividing 480 into thirds, 160 times 2, 2/3. That's 320. So let's go ahead. Right now the note is located at measure 2, beat 1, 480. What happens if we swing it 200%? So let's add 320 to 480. So 320 plus 480 equals 800. Okay, let's swing this by 200%. Apply that. Let's grab the note, check its location. Sure enough, measure 2, beat 1, tick 800. So we've really swung it pretty severely, though, at 200%. Just for the heck of it, it would be almost musically unuseful. Let's undo that. And I'm going to just take my grabber tool and move this note out of the way. Okay? So let's grab that note there, and let's swing it by 300%. Okay? And go back to our calculator. We multiplied 160, we used it by itself, and we multiplied it by 2. 160 times 3, 3/3 is 480. So this note should actually be swung so hard, it's going to swing it out of the next beat. And sure enough, it does. Okay? So the percentages in Pro Tools, 100, 200, and 300%, are basically 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3 of the way over from our original position right there. Okay? And if we want to see some grids to actually illustrate it a little bit better, I'm going to go ahead here and change to 16th note triplet grid. And now you can see here's that first 1/3, here's the second 1/3, and here's the third 1/3 right there. So zoom out just a little bit there. There we go. 480, there's that number 640. There's that number 800 right there. So anyway, the concepts of Pro Tools swing, dividing the percentage divides into thirds. Very quickly, what's actually useful? Well, when I'm using swing on a track, a typical pop track like this, I'll grab all the eighth notes and let me mute my selection, MIDI selection, so I don't make so much noise there. There we go. And I'll typically start somewhere around the 55% range, 55 to 60. So I'll put in 57 as a starter, apply that, and we'll check that out. And that can be just enough to give it a little bit of a swing, not something so severe that it calls attention to itself and makes the track almost unlistenable. Unless, of course, that's what you want. Okay? All right, so let's leave it there, and I think that's a pretty good look at the Quantize features in Pro Tools. Hope you're able to apply them creatively in the music that you're making.